Have you ever gone to the state fair and gotten a fried dough where you sprinkle your sugar on top and then you bite into it and it's this wet, yummy, crunchy yumminess? Today we're going to be making beignets, which is an elevated version of that with a French influence, and I'm very excited to show you how to do this. They're traditionally made with choux pastry, but they can also be made in a couple of different ways. Today we're going to use a yeasted dough process, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in 1 cup of warm water. It has to be about 110 degrees. I'm using some yeast, sprinkle that over the top, and I am also putting some sugar in to feed that yeast. The original recipe that I'm using actually calls for rapid rise, which is great. You can use that. I am using just traditional yeast and it works fine. I've made these and that is absolutely fine to do. So we're gonna set this aside and we're gonna let that start to bubble, let that sugar feed that yeast. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get some flour, a little bit of salt, and some additional sugar. These are not sweet. Going to whisk that up. Just mix it all together. So this step 1, step 2, and step 3. We're going to take 2 eggs, put them in a bowl, give that a whisk, and we're going to add just a few tablespoons of oil, neutral oil, and mix that up so that they're blended well. So what we're waiting for now is, see how that yeast is starting to come alive? We're not quite there yet, but we're gonna just let that sit for a couple more minutes. This yeast is bubbling and ready to go. So the next step we're going to do here, we're gonna put the flour and the eggs mixture in. And I did use room temperature eggs. If you don't have room temperature eggs, it will just take long for this to rise. So if you have forethought to take these eggs out, that's a positive. And we're just gonna mix these up quickly. No beaters, just a spoon and a whisk and a couple of bowls, and very easy to put this together. And the nice thing about this is you can put this together right before your guests come for dinner. It has to rise in the refrigerator for about an hour, or at least an hour, and you can roll these out and cook them while they're there, or you can prepare them ahead, but it's a nice kind of fun thing to do if you have company. Okay, so that's mixed. And I usually would leave it in the bowl and put plastic over it, which is perfectly acceptable. But I did get a Christmas present this year that I'm really, really happy with. I've made a couple of other things, but I got this bowl for rising things. And the nice thing about it is it's got a measurement over it. So we are going to rise this dough until it's double, so you can see where it is and then know where it is on the container once it's risen to double. I mean, you can eyeball it as well, but I've really enjoyed these. Never had them before, used it several times, and I'm thrilled. So we're gonna put this in. Gonna just make sure that's kind of flat, no pickiness about this. Gonna put the top on. Is this the coolest thing? And so I know it's about right. I'm going to just say it's about right there, right under a quart. And I'm going to put it in the refrigerator and let this rise. The dough is ready. It's in the refrigerator still. I am heating the oil up. I've used just a cast iron pan, and the oil is just put enough in so that they don't sink to the bottom. I've got like 1.5 inches in there. That's a good amount. I do have a thermometer here, and we want to get this between 350 and 375 degrees. So the first thing we're going to do before we take the dough out is, once we get this dough fried, we're going to take it out and we're going to coat it. And You can do it with confectionery sugar, but my family likes it with cinnamon, so we're gonna put some cinnamon in. And this is all by taste. Okay, we're gonna just stir this up. That looks perfect to me. I can smell the cinnamon. You can add more or less as you like it. I happen to be insanely and madly in love with cinnamon. So, okay, I'll put this over here for the time being. Now, this dough is extremely wet. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover our counter with a heavier dose of flour than I normally recommend for breaded doughs. I mean, for yeasted doughs. And then the other thing we have here is I have a sheet pan with a piece of parchment paper, and I'm also going to take that and put flour on that so that once I get these cut out, they don't stick to the parchment paper. So we'll put that over to the side while we work on this dough. So this is how it's risen, and it was about right here. So we've definitely doubled that. It's been a little bit over an hour, and that's okay. So we're going to take the top off of this. That is gorgeous. The only issue with this is that it's wet. So we're going to take about half of this out. You can measure this if you want to, but we're just going to take half of this dough. We're going to drop that down on this counter. I just turn this over and get the other side, and then we're going to start working with this dough with our hands. Work from the outside edges. Keep flouring your hands. And you want to make a rectangle. And it's not difficult. You just don't want to pull the middle too much. We're looking for about a 12 by 9 inch rectangle here, but probably 1/8 of an inch thick. And this dough looks really good. It's got bubbles in it, and I'm handling it gently. And I try to make the corners as cornery as possible so that they don't come out like triangles when you're cooking them, but it really doesn't matter. This time I am going to use a pizza cutter. Okay, so we're going to do 4. And then 3. Yeah, I like this method better. That's great. Okay, we'll put these over here. All right, now I'm going to quickly clean up this counter. A bench scraper is your best friend in the kitchen when you're making bread doughs. The next thing we're going to do is I've got another cookie sheet with the tray on it, and we're going to put these in, and we're going to take these out as soon as they are done. It's at 350. I will show you a little trick. I'm going to get a little piece of one of these over here. So here's a little piece of dough from the other batch that we've done. And this is a good way to test this. If this starts bubbling, then we're ready to go. That's perfect. That's a perfect, and it bounced right up to the top. So that is a perfect temperature. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take these and we're going to put them in. Now, when you're putting things in hot oil, you have to be very careful because they're going to splash. And so the best way to do that is to start and move your hand in the direction that you're putting the item in. So you go like that, and it pulls your hand away. So you want to put it in and just... And we'll put 4 in at a time. And look at this handy dandy little triangle we've got in here. And we're going to put these in for about 3 minutes. I'll put the timer on and see how the bubbles, that's why we don't want to roll it with a rolling pin, because you want these bubbles. You bite into that, it's just delicious. So I'm going to take this off, and that's our little test piece. Okay, I'm going to turn these over. It's been about a minute. That's nice and golden brown, and that is exactly what you're looking for. You can see when they, whoops. That's holding at 350, and that nice light brown color is exactly what you're looking for. And if I'm not using a thermometer, that's how I tell. If they get too dark too fast, then your oil is too hot, so you just turn it down. And it's all about the color on that first drop in that you'll know it's too hot immediately. And I'm just pushing those down a little bit. The sides of these stay a little white because they puff up so much, which is okay. But every once in a while, I'll just hold them down and get a little browning on those. I'm going to turn those over. Those are also perfectly brown. So I am going to take those out a little bit under 3 minutes, just make sure. And then I'm going to make sure that my temperature is still at 350. And so we're going to drop that in. And then we're going to take our sugar, and I'm going to put some of this in a strainer. And I'm going to take this strainer and I'm going to start putting that powdered sugar on there. And you can put as much as or as little as you want. And it's the most delectable dessert. It's very important to put the sugar on while they're hot because it will stick. It doesn't melt because they cool off quite quickly. It adheres when it's warm much better than if it's cold. And let's give these a taste. They're light. They crackle a little bit. The sugar, I probably put more on than most people would want, but the cinnamon sugar thing is it's just so yummy. So let's take a bite and see what they look like inside. Oh my gosh, they're cooked perfectly. And the inside has big bubble holes in it, which is what you're looking for. Let's break that up a little bit and see if we can see what that dough looks like. And it's just airy and fluffy and absolutely delicious. Look at that big, that's why you don't want to use a rolling pin because those you pop all of those. Yum. Thank you.